Hello and welcome. I'm Paisley. If you don't know me, thanks for stopping by my yoga channel and practicing with me today. This practice is intended to bring some relief to PMS, to cramps, to low back pain, any kind of discomfort you have in your lower abdomen or your low back. It's going to be restorative in nature. You're going to want some props with you for this. So a yoga block, some sort of a blanket or a towel. It's something that you can fold up and create some elevation and softness with. And then lastly, a bolster. And I know bolsters are a bit expensive, but I would recommend saving up for that at some point because they do really make a great impact in your practice. For now, we're going to set those to the side and we're going to begin in child's pose. But I want you to take child's pose with your knees wider than normal. So take the knees like out to the outer edges of your mat with the big toes touching back behind, and then begin to walk your torso forward between the knees. You can maybe cross your forearms and rest your forehead on your wrists or on the floor. With the knees a little bit wider, we have more space for the lower belly, the uterus, any discomfort that we might be having there. So just let your belly hang and release down with gravity. Use your breath here to center yourself and to aid in that relaxation. Let's just take a couple more breaths here. Really trying to let go in the pelvic area so that the belly can almost spill out towards the floor. No holding the belly in at all right now. And as you take your last breath in this shape, try to expand the circumference of your waistline down low, the front, the back, the sides, all the way out. And then let that breath go. And slowly start to push yourself up toward sitting. So just as a reminder in restorative yoga, if you've done it with me before, you know this. You just want to move really gently and slowly between poses, as the transitions are just as important as the poses themselves. Grab your bolster, maybe a couple king-size pillows stacked one on top of the other, whatever you have that you can mimic that shape with. Put it crossways on your mat. You're going to place your block on the opposite side of the bolster from your hips. And you might wish to have a little padding on that block, especially if you have a wood block. So you might just put that blanket over that there. Now you're going to lie down. We're going to start with the left side ribs resting on the bolster. You're trying to release the shoulder on one side, and you're kind of hovering with the height of the bolster so you're not smushing the shoulder. And then the side of your head is going to go on the block or the padded block. Now, you're also welcome, if you have more props around you, to put like a pillow between your knees or another blanket between your knees. If I had one next to me, I would be doing that. That's really nice to give space for the hips and the pelvis and the low back right now. If you don't have an extra item, you could consider separating the knees. And again, we're just trying to make more space for the reproductive organs, for the low belly, for the back. And when you do restorative poses, you want to stay in the pose for a while if you can. 2 minutes would be kind of a minimum amount of time. And maybe 5 minutes is a better aim. So I'm going to grab myself something for between my knees because I don't feel like I can stay that long without an extra prop. So you can always do that as well. And you'll see me a little bit moving around this battery pack on my mic just so I don't accidentally sit on it and turn it off. So don't mind that. Yeah. So don't be afraid. The point is, don't be afraid to modify and readjust so that you can care for yourself in this time of need. If you happen to have your eyes open, just keep the gaze light, sometimes called like a far mountain gaze. Like you're looking out at a distant horizon. You can also let your eyes close at any time. Even though we're trying to stay in the pose for a longer amount of time than we would in a typical yoga practice, that doesn't mean that you have to be completely rigid and still. The body is probably going to let go. That's actually the point, right? So you can readjust, moving the hips if needed, or changing the orientation of how you're leaning on the prop. Really try to give in to the support. Just let your weight rest heavily on the bolster. So you're not trying to hold yourself up at all. For most people, the mind is always sort of leaping forward, or sometimes it's replaying the past, but that'll translate into an urge to get up or move to the next position. And again, I'm not saying don't adjust yourself if you need to, but just notice if there's a tendency to try to jump from one thing to the next out of some urge that you feel you should be doing something. And right now, we're just being here, not doing, but being. And this allows the body and the mind and the spirit to all come together in one place. It's a good practice to just periodically notice where your mind mind is, if it's replaying an event or worrying about something that you seem to not know how to resolve. And if this is troubling you, you can bring some attention back to your physical body and the pressure that it's feeling of its own weight on the bolster. Sink into that support just a little bit more. I'm going to add just a very simple movement here. So with your right arm, let's take it up overhead. If it feels okay with your shoulder, just reach out alongside your ear. Just stretch through that side of your body. And then bend your elbow and bring your arm back to a relaxed place. Blink the eyes open if they're closed. Preparing to move, go slowly, as I mentioned. Just push down with your hands. You can roll the head up slowly until you can sit. So I find the easiest way to change sides is to just turn my body around so that I'm sitting on the right hip. And now the right side ribs are going to go onto the bolster. And again, we're trying to give space for the right arm and shoulder so that it's not smushed down on the floor. If it is, you might want to build your bolster prop up higher. The right side of your head resting on your block or folded blanket or whatever you have, and maybe a cushion between the knees. That's going to give more space for the hips, the pelvis, the low back, the uterus. And you can always separate the knees wider by making that prop bigger. Again, we're aiming for a feeling of at least support that we can relax into, if not relief. So we want to be able to be in this shape for a solid 2 to 5 minutes. And I'm not timing, I'm just using my body's instinct, but you get the idea. Adjust accordingly and then just settle in. Bring the lightest touch of awareness to the state of your mind. Noticing what the habitual patterning is for you. Does it go to the future? Worrying? Does it go to the past? Replaying? Fearing? And how about for just right now, you try to stay right here in this time. And just feel the contact points on your body that are touching the bolster, touching the block. And see if you can't receive that support by releasing your weight into them. And whatever emotion or feeling might be arising, you don't really need to do anything about that right now. Right now, we're just being here and letting all aspects of ourselves coexist in a welcoming environment. And there may be that urge to fidget or get up. It's hard for the mind to accept that there's really nothing to do right now, but to just be here. So if you have that kind of agitation, you can acknowledge that in yourself. And just tell that part of yourself, it's okay. We've got plenty of things to do later. Let's just be here together now. And soften your eyes. Soften your jaw. Whatever part of you still feels a little bit gripped up, maybe that fist of tension can just ease with a deep exhale. We'll begin to add our arm sweep. So just slow and steady. Reach up through the left arm and take it overhead, palm down, so the upper arm comes kind of near your ear. And bend your elbow to the front so you can rest your arm back on the bolster or the floor. And start to blink your eyes open, just starting to see where you are again. Turn the head a little bit down and use your hands to roll the spine up to a seat again. If you have a prop between your knees, just take that out. And let's turn to sit so that you're facing your block setup. If you have a blanket on the block, we're going to take that away. And we're going to rotate the bolster 90 degrees so that it's going to go lengthwise. And we're going to set one end up on the block. Now, this end is pretty high, and you may need this height. We'll see in a moment. But that's also more wobbly. So I'm going to suggest starting with the medium height on your block and then bringing the bolster down. Once you have that set up, you're going to separate the feet in a straddle on either side with straight legs. Now, if sitting like this means that your low back is kind of rolled into the back seat, grab one of the blankets that you have and place that in a kind of a tidy fold so that you can elevate your hips on it. And that's going to help tip your hips more forward. If you do have two blankets, you might choose to use the other one out at the other end of your bolster. So what we're going to do here is lean forward. So for me, with this bolster, my solar plexus is hitting the end of it, which actually feels really nice. And then the forehead is going to come down with a little space for the nose. So if you don't have a blanket here, you could also use your forearms crossed with your forehead resting on your arms. No matter what you do with your arms, just find a very relaxed way to place them so you do not have to hold them up at all. For this version of this pose is called Upavista Konasana, so it's a wide-legged seated pose. For this version, just let your legs relax. So they're straight, but if they roll out or in, don't worry. Soften the shoulders. Soften the tongue. And like we did in our very first pose, child's pose, let the belly drop forward and down with gravity. This is obviously going to give room to the cramping feeling you might have in your uterus, but it's also going to help ease the gripping in your low back. And one of the things that happens when we experience pain is that we can compound the experience by sort of catastrophizing it mentally. This is very normal. And what I mean is that we might be thinking, gosh, when is this ever going to end? Am I always going to have these horrible cramps? Why do I have so much pain today? And this kind of doubles the pain experience. And so then an emotional response of clenching and gripping and tightening in resistance can occur. And so this is why I'm suggesting just notice where your mind goes. And I want you to focus just on your body today. So that mental dialogue may still be there, but we're not feeding it any attention. We're just going to feel the stretch of the legs, the contact point of the head on what it's resting upon. And maybe there's still some pain or discomfort in the hips, the low back, the pelvis, the reproductive organs. And we're acknowledging that, not trying to change it, just letting it be. But also not adding to that story with our mental or emotional catastrophizing or resistance. If the emotion comes, just let it. Let the tears flow, let the anger rise. Just let it be. Maybe Pay some attention all around the back of the heart and where the back of the heart connects to the shoulders, and just do your best to be open there, to soften and let go so that you can be okay with where you are. And just remember that you can always adjust your head higher or lower. I've already lowered mine a couple times as my body's let go. So subtle, mindful adjustments while we stay just a little bit longer here in supported, wide-legged forward fold. Let's take one big exhale. Start to roll yourself up, head last. You know, you can always stay longer. Just pause the video. If you have the urge to stay more, definitely try to listen to that. So just sit upright for a moment before moving. Let the head reacclimate to a neutral position instead of forward folded. And we have one more in this sequence. You don't have to change the bolster at all here, but you are going to scoot away so that you can turn around. And I'm a little close to the wall, so I'm going to scoot back. But what you're going to do with your blanket is, you can also use like a bath towel for this. A bath sheet would even be better. Is you're going to take it into a roll. So you start with a wide rectangle and roll it along the long way so that you have a big long, this is how you know I'm from California, taquito. Born and raised in San Diego. So sit now with your back toward the same setup that you were just using. So the low back is kind of going to abut the prop. You're going to have the rolled taquito blanket in front of you. Place the soles of your feet together with your knees bent out to the side. With this blanket, you're going to start by putting it over the top of your feet, but then the ends are going to tuck under your outer calf knee area. That's just going to support your knees a little bit. You can tuck the tail slightly and start to lie back. Now, if you find that your head is too low, you can elevate the block or place your other blanket underneath there. And this is, if you only could choose one pose in the sequence, this is the pose you would do for cramps and any kind of distress, even digestive distress in the lower abdomen. It's not uncommon for people to want to be in this position for 15 minutes. So we'll be here for a little while, probably not quite that long for the purpose of this video, but of course, stay as long as you need to. Often you'll hear me give a suggestion about softening the eyes or the gaze, and the eyes are really indicative of what the mind is doing. So with the eyes soft, we're asking the mind to soften a little as well. You know what I mean by softening the mind is not so attached to our old stories, not so caught up in our worries. Just letting go a bit of that attachment. So behind the closed eyes, let the gaze be down a little bit more towards the floor in front of you, towards your nose. Imagine the eyeballs just settling back within the eye sockets. And with the eyes a little more still, your mind can be more still and present, just where you are now. Try to be with whatever arises here. If you catch the mind catastrophizing, an emotional body responding with tension, choose to focus on the contact points that your body is making with the support beneath you. That other stuff can still be there. You're just selectively letting it be outside of your focus. Your breath can be completely natural. You don't need to control it here. If it's shorter and faster, that's fine. It might be punctuated by a heavier sigh now and then. And if you happen to fall asleep, that's probably because you're sleep deprived and you need it. So just be okay with all of that. For these last few moments, just put your worries down. Turn your attention away from that mental chatter if there's any remaining. Just give some space and some breath to your body. When you do feel ready to reawaken, just start to move your fingers, your hands, your wrists. Maybe blink the eyes open if you want to awaken that way. Just roll one knee over toward the other so that you can roll to your side. When you roll off the prop, use your hands. Try not to kick with the legs and just come back to sitting. We'll sit for just a couple of breaths upright, and giving opportunity for a transition back to reality. And then if it's meaningful for you, take your hands together in Anjali Mudra, and we'll take one last breath together. Let it out through your mouth. Thank you so much for stopping in to practice today, and I hope this has been a soothing and enjoyable practice for you. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.